Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Community Chat. Joining us is Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, who is a Democratic candidate for governor. Attorney General, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you, Kevin,
So, right out of the gate, I have to ask, why have you decided to run for governor?
because I believe, Kevin, that Massachusetts is the greatest state in the country. We've got a lot going for us. But the truth is, a lot of people right now are hurting and they're not feeling that things are working for them. They're not enjoying the kind of economic opportunity that they should be enjoying. And I want to change that. I want to be a governor who's about creating opportunity, creating jobs, creating economic mobility. We've got real challenges on our hands when it comes to the high cost of housing in particular. We've got a transportation system that needs investment. And we've got a lot of work to do as we build out climate resiliency across the region. So a lot of work to do, workforce issues, a continuing opioid crisis. But look, I've been Attorney General the last 7 years. I know how to get things done. I know how to lead, having managed an office of 600 people and a budget of $60 million a year. And I have been working up close with business leaders, community leaders, state and federal officials for a long time now. And I know what we need to do to get things done.
Yeah, you kind of jumped on, you mentioned a couple of different issues that I want to make sure that we touch upon. Where would you rank housing and healthcare as agenda items if and when you are elected to office?
I think housing is right at the top. Whether I'm talking to people who are running companies, CEOs, their top concern right now, Kevin, is that employees are looking to move elsewhere because they can't afford rents, they can't afford to buy a home, they can't afford to raise a family here. When I'm talking to people around the state, they're telling me the same thing. They can't afford rents. We've seen landlords, double, triple rents. We've seen also the just prices go way, way up. Do you know that the average median price of a house in Massachusetts is $530,000 right now? That's the Massachusetts average. And so, we've got to get that under control. And one of the things I've called for, Kevin, is more housing stock. We need to create more housing units around the state that will be available for purchase to middle income folks and to those who need more affordability.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that, when you talk about 40B and affordable housing, is that a key way to be able to increase housing stock? And how are there creative ways to be able to increase the housing stock here in the Commonwealth?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we've got to do. We've got to build more housing. We've got to build more apartments. We've got to build more multifamily housing. We've got to build more single family homes. We need to build out more around our transit hubs. That makes a lot of sense to me to situate housing near transportation that we should be investing in public transportation so that people can live near where they need to get to in terms of their transit, whether that's by rail or by bus. And we also need to deal with some communities who don't want to see that kind of housing. The fact of the matter is, we need to see some relaxation in our zoning. We need to see some more production out there, all the way from the Cape to the Berkshires, because I'm telling you that this is an issue about Massachusetts competitiveness. It's an issue that is top for so many families right now, the high cost of housing, in addition, of course, to gas and to groceries and to childcare, all issues. But as a state, we've got to come together and deal with our housing issue.
Let's talk about COVID. This has been an item, a pandemic that we didn't foresee coming. How do you feel it elects? How do you feel it will affect the next individual who is elected governor?
Well, I think we're going to continue to deal with COVID and the results of COVID. I mean, look at what's happened already. We've got a workforce in healthcare that's been decimated. So many people are burnt out. They were overburdened, overextended, and they've left. We actually need to fill that workforce as an immediate matter. We've got a lot of people who are dealing with anxiety, depression. We have young people who missed a lot of school for a couple of years, and we need to make that up to them. We also need to deal with how work has changed. More people are working from home,
Yeah.
working remotely. So, what does that mean in terms of downtown spaces and the vibrancy of cities? How are we going to evolve and work through this? COVID, I also think, Kevin, has, for all the heartache and all the disruption, and my heart goes out to families who had loved ones who got sick, who had loved ones who died. And I just want to give it up to all the folks on the front lines and healthcare and first responders and people working in the grocery stores and driving the trains and buses that they got us through this. We also have learned about some resilience and new ways of doing things. And I want us in Massachusetts to embrace new ways of doing things.
We look right now, inflation is a key item that everybody's dealing with, rising fuel costs, um, rising costs to do business, which could potentially cripple an economy if this trend continues. What do you feel that your administration is going to will have to do to prevent the state from going into or enduring a long-term recession?
Well, actually, as a state, we are in relatively good fiscal shape. We're in good financial shape. We have that going for us, Kevin. But you're absolutely right that we have inflation headwinds right on us now, gas, groceries, you name it. And people, families are feeling that. So, as governor, I want to fight for affordability. I want to make things more affordable, healthcare more affordable, housing more affordable, transportation more affordable, all the basics, right? That's what I want to be about. We've got to find a way to bring relief to our families now, and over the longer term. And I know that we're going to be dealing with this over the next few months, particularly when it comes to gas prices. And we've got to find a way to give people relief in the short term and in the long term. But housing, healthcare, and transportation are the big drivers right now.
Any surprise that we haven't seen the legislature move to have like a gas holiday, relieve the gas tax? Is that something that, if this continues and we still see high gas prices, that maybe you would seek to relax the gas tax for short term?
Well, here's what I want to make sure we do. I want to make sure that we actually provide relief that gets to people. So, whatever the proposal is, let's make sure that it's actually ending up in dollars being back in the pockets of people across the state. That's the first thing. I do think we need to think about what kinds of relief we can be giving people. The legislature right now is considering an array of proposals. The governor has put forward any number of ideas. I know those talks are ongoing and we're towards the close of a legislative session. So I hope we see some action there because our families do need it.
Let's talk a little bit about policing and the state's criminal legal system. Where do you feel it stands currently, and what needs to be done to further reform these two areas?
I think we need to do a few things. One, the state, through legislation last year, created a commission that's going to implement standards for policing and certify and decertify police if they do things that are outside of what they should be doing. That's the first thing. So we need to support that commission. We also need to recruit more people into policing because the fact of the matter is we don't have enough people going into policing right now. A lot of people are leaving policing. It's a hard job. It's a hard time. It's been a really, really challenging time in our country and in our state, of course. And so we need to make sure that we are supporting police with a workforce. We need to make sure that we are providing them with the training and the supports they need. And one thing, Kevin, that's really important is we need to do more when it comes to mental health. Police are often called upon to respond to situations that involve a real issue around mental health. And we need to make sure that communities, we are supporting as a state, communities' efforts to bring mental health providers, social service workers, and the like to these situations because police are finding themselves having to deal with really problematic and trying issues. And that we need to continue to do.
If you're just joining us, so we are speaking with a Massachusetts Attorney General, Maura Healey. She is a Democratic candidate for governor. She's joining us to talk about her campaign to be your next governor. Um, I would ask you this. We talked a little bit about transportation. We talked about the gas tax. Where do you see the transportation infrastructure today? And what would you like to do if elected governor to for the betterment of our roadways and our public transit?
What what do we need to do? I'll tell you what we need to do. We need to make sure that our transportation, our buses, our rails, commuter rail, T, are a few things. One, running and available at times that work for people's work hours. Two, we need to make sure that they run on time and are reliable. And three, we need to make sure that they're safe and affordable. Right now, there are huge issues, particularly when it comes to the safety of the MBTA. That's going to be addressed right now. We
Mm.
also need to make transportation affordable. Because if we want to get people out of their cars and using public transportation, it's got to be affordable, it's got to be accessible, and it's got to be safe. These are the things that we need to invest in. And there are a number of projects, including South Coast Rail, including infrastructure investments in regional transit authorities, which are really important because this isn't just commuter rail and the T, it's regional transit authorities and buses in so many places that need to be supported. And finally, as you and I drive around the state, Kevin, we know that we've got bridges and roads that desperately need repair. We've got to make those investments as well.
Are those investments something that we do here within the Commonwealth, or is it something that you reach out to our federal partners to see if we can get grants and monies to be able to take care of the infrastructure?
It's both. It's both, right? And we've seen that through ARPA and some of the money that's
Yep.
come through. We've got a terrific congressional delegation out there working hard every day to try to bring back money to the Commonwealth. So we've got to make use of those federal monies. We got to make use of state money. This is an all hands on deck moment in terms of investment in important infrastructure, transportation, housing, healthcare. The other issue I'd mention, Kevin, is childcare. Now, Massachusetts has super high rates of childcare. And right now, that's keeping a lot of women from returning to the workforce.
Mm.
Right now, it's costing as much to send an infant to daycare in Massachusetts as it is to send an 18-year-old off to a public university. That's wrong. We've got to change that. We need more providers. We need more people out there providing childcare. And, again, this is something that I am calling out as a real issue that we need to deal with in the state. It's also why I support the Common Start legislation, which would have the effect of capping how much each family has to pay for necessary childcare.
So it's a couple of years ago that the legislature passed the Student Opportunity Act. It was a little slow getting out of the gate because of the pandemic. How important is education to the Healey administration moving forward? Do you feel that the Student Opportunity Act will do enough in the coming years, or is there something more that you'd like to see done to fortify education here in the Commonwealth?
Hey, I want to be the education governor. Education is absolutely so fundamental. It's so fundamental to the lives of our young people, where they end up, what kind of jobs, what kind of opportunities they have. And it's an obligation of government working together, state, local, to provide that to our young people and to our families. Here's what we need to do. We need to support and fully fund the Student Opportunity Act. That's an important piece of legislation. It will go a long way, but it isn't enough because we also need to, Kevin, make sure that we are giving our schools right now wraparound services. What am I talking about? I'm talking about social workers. I'm talking about guidance counselors, therapists, mental health specialists. Right now, what I hear from so many parents, administrators, principals, and teachers is that they just don't have access to these resources for their kids and kids, especially after COVID, coming through what they've lived through, really need that. So fully fund Student Opportunity Act, but also get those additional supports to our schools.
We just have a few minutes left in our conversation with you, Attorney General. But I want to give you an opportunity. Maybe there's an issue or two that we haven't touched upon, but maybe you might want to address or at least speak to for a moment or two. If you will, it's almost like an open question.
Well, I appreciate it. Let me say this. There are a couple things that are really, I think, important that we need to deal with. And one is the what's happening in this country. There's a lot of anger out there. There's a lot of vitriol and disagreement. There are a lot of people, particularly politicians, who seem to want to pit one person against the other. And usually they're saying and doing things that are just for their own political gain. They don't really care about the people that they're elected to serve. But we can be different in Massachusetts, and we have been different. And I want to be a leader who brings people together, who gets people working together. I want us to rise above the noise and get things done and deliver real results for people. I want to be somebody who works with our local officials, our state officials, our federal officials, and also with our business community and community organizations and groups. And there's so much potential there. So that's the first point, and that's a message I really want the voters to hear from me, is that you will see a governor who tries to see you and tries to listen to you and tries to meet you where you are, recognizing that we've got people in all sorts of circumstances with all sorts of backgrounds, and views in this state. And that's really important if we really are a commonwealth. The other thing is this: I think it's time that we do what we need to do to address equity, and put an equity lens on everything. I think COVID has shown how racial disparities are real. You just look at COVID and who was more likely to get sick, who was more likely to die. Um, we need to, and we have an opportunity now to address racial disparities in our environment, in healthcare, in education, and in employment. And that is something that I want to be really intentional about. Because the fact of the matter is, it just is the case still that if you're a white family in Greater Boston, your household net worth is probably $250,000. If you're Black or African American, it's about $8. We need to change that. And I want your viewers also to know that as the Attorney General who sued the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma, combating the opioid crisis remains and would remain a top priority. It's why I'm proud that my team brought back over $500 million to the state that's going directly to treatment, recovery, prevention. We need to continue to invest in those efforts because people continue to overdose, they continue to die, and we need to, as a state, um, just because COVID and other things took the front page, the opioid crisis is real. Having spent a lot of time in the Taunton and Brockton area, I know a lot of families have suffered, and I just want people to know we're not going to stop working on that.
If folks want to get involved with your campaign, if they have any questions, they want to, follow where you will be traveling around the Commonwealth and meeting and greeting folks, how can they do that?
Oh, well, come visit us, I guess, at morahealey.com. There are great ways to read about what we're up to, see what I'm doing, follow us on social media. There are also, and I welcome this, opportunities to volunteer and get involved. Really, as somebody who played point guard, that was the position I played in basketball and in high school, college, and when I played professionally. This is about teamwork. This is about bringing people together. And the greatest statistic for a point guard, as you know, Kevin, is the assist.
Yeah.
And that's how I want to lead as governor. And we want to build a big team for this campaign, and we want to build a big team that can deliver for families around this state.
Well, I will say, the Celtics could have used a ball handler like you during this recent run in the finals. Hopefully, they are successful
Well,
next year.
well, I hope they are. They needed to take care of the ball, so hopefully they'll work that out in the off season.
Attorney General, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Kevin. Take good care.
You got it. And you have been tuned into Community Chat. Until our next conversation, have yourself a great day.